Noah's phone vibrated in his pocket, and he took it out to read the text message that had just come in. My office, 1300 hours. He looked up at Sarah and Neil, who were sitting across his kitchen table from him. They had been eating lunch, but their phones had gone off at the same time as his, and he knew they were reading the same message.
"I guess the dragon lady thinks it's time to get us back in the saddle," Neil said.
Sarah nodded. "I've kind of been expecting it," she said. "It's been a month. I'm surprised they gave us that long." Neil looked up at Noah.
"Don't suppose they gave you any heads up on what's happening, did they?"
"No," Noah said. "I'm sure this has to do with filling the gap in our team. With Moose gone, we need a new backup man. I would imagine we're going to meet him today." Neil and Sarah looked at one another, but didn't say anything. They had both felt the incredible impact of Moose's loss, but they had finally stopped breaking into tears each time they thought of him. Moose Conway had been more than just a part of their team. He had been like a brother to each of them, and had given his life in an effort to save theirs. Their last mission, to ferret out the people behind a little-known but powerful terrorist organization, had gone sour, and they had been forced to go after one of the most deadly assassins the world had ever known. When it came down to a firefight, that assassin had drawn a bead on Neil, but Moose had drawn his fire and taken the bullet. His heroism had cost him his life. Noah Wolfe, their team leader, had fired the shots that ended that assassin's career, along with his life. Noah was an assassin himself, the shining star of the American organization, known simply as E&E. He had been recruited after a short but illustrious military career, specifically because he suffered from something known as atypical blunted affect disorder, a rare condition that leaves its victims without emotions, or conscience of any kind. Noah had not been afflicted with the ravaging grief that Sarah and Neil had known, but he still felt the vacancy that Moose's death had left in his life. There was something wrong with Moose gone, something that simply would never be right again in Noah's world. Unfortunately, the work that they did was dangerous. As an assassin, it was often up to Noah to eliminate dangerous or evil persons from the world, just the way any soldier might have to eliminate an enemy. There were always risks in any kind of war, and Moose was not the first to die in the service of E&E, nor would he be the last. Noah had come to the conclusion that the Grim Reaper knew each of their names, and probably had them written on some future to-do list.
"Man,"
Neil said.
"I hope whoever we get isn't an asshole. Moose is going to be a tough act to follow."
"It's almost 12:15, Sarah said. "We should probably get on the way if we're going to get there on time." She put away the bread and cold cuts they had used for making sandwiches, while Noah cleared their plates and put them in the dishwasher. Neil walked out ahead of them and managed to twist his long, lanky frame into the back seat of Sarah's Camaro when they joined him. Noah slid into the front passenger seat as Sarah got behind the wheel, and they headed into Kirtland. Sarah had to push the car a bit to make it on time, but they stepped out of the elevator at 2 minutes before 1. Getting to Allison's office took only a minute, so they were actually slightly early when her secretary waved them in. Don Jefferson, Allison's right-hand man, was already sitting on one of the big leather sofas in her office. Allison was in the wingback chair she used when she was holding an informal meeting, so Noah and the others settled onto the sofa across from the one Jefferson occupied. Allison Peterson was the director of E&E. She answered only to the President of the United States, and her approval was required before any assassination could be ordered by American operatives. In most cases, any assassination she sanctioned would be carried out by one of the teams that worked for her.
"I'm assuming you've all had time to cope with the loss of Mr. Conway," Allison said without preamble. "We understand how devastating such a loss can be to a team, but it's also necessary to get you past it and back into action as soon as possible. We have to replace him today, and your new teammate will be here in just a few minutes."